ad hoc test grid UI meeting. I don't have to do anything formal in this one. Whoever wants to start, go ahead. Maybe, Ben, since you have some stuff in notes, if you want to just give a summary of some stuff.
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I figured I'd dump a bunch of stuff in here so we at least had something to argue about instead of start with a clean slate. Um it's interesting. Let me see. Was it Peter? I think you showed up in our Slack channel and went, by the way, if you're all talking about test grid, Prow could use a little love too. And so it was like, okay, cool. Well, that's interesting. And kind of following along with that a little, I mean, we only talked a little bit and I think you all have seen it, but sounds like both could use some love and both could use some modernization. And there's probably some pretty real, um, just limitations around here, right? That everybody can recognize. So throughout there, like, well, if you're looking at that, it seems like what Prowse UI is like a decade old, and I don't know if it's really much of anything in particular. And Test Grid, you got the new thing rolling, but I see Material UI is looks like it's not really maintained by anybody either. So there's kind of that, well, what do we do?
Yeah, my understanding is material web components are like developed for the things that they have, but since it is in maintenance mode, there is no ongoing development, at least last I checked for like the major stuff. I
Hmm.
don't think there is any planned as far as I know, without divulging anything internal because I don't know anything internal. But yeah.
Nice. So it seems like it's worth the question right now before while things are kind of greenfieldy in this whole effort, other than Test Grids, had a little bit of work. And I don't know how long you guys have been working on that, but it seems like Greenfield-esque. Why not unify on some of the most popular open source things right now that are more likely or most likely to be able to be picked up by any front end dev who's done any amount of front end dev for anything. And ideally, even there's a lot of people who do back end work and just don't really like front end but are capable. And usually the turnoff there, from my experience, is CSS and not wanting to write that, right? Which is fine. So there's kind of a fairly natural like set of things that I tossed in here of just, language. TypeScript seems to be everybody kind of favors type safety these days. React is pretty prominent. Uh, there's a router for it. Great. Piece of cake. State management used to be Redux. Redux is a lot of boilerplate. There's something called the stand now that's pretty simple way to just collect your state up and not have to have all the boilerplate of Redux. So that seems pretty okay. There's a couple other things in there, but Vite seems to be the build tool of the day. And Tailwind, I think Arnaud said he opened a PR that kind of stirred the pot a little bit on that. But I tend to think it's probably the way to go with a engineering, not so front end heavy group. And even better is just picking a tool component library and not write CSS at all if possible. And there's several out there that are kind of tailwindy oriented, that are pretty popular these days. There's MUI, just material, but that seems to be pretty complicated. It has like material UI, but also Joy UI, but also MUI, but also MUIX. And I was like, okay, that's probably more of a, if you got a bunch of front end people who want to dive in and know all that already, then great. But if not, there's two others. Daisy UI I've used before, and that's like CSS only Tailwind stuff, but it's got that kind of, okay, we'll make the semantic BTN class. So if you want a button, just throw the button on there at the end, move on. Shad is another one that's kind of in that realm of stuff where it's pretty straightforward. You just oddly copy the components directly into your project and you own them. I don't quite know how I feel about that personally, but it could be worth just looking at. But either way, Daisy's easy, easy, easy if you want the easy button. But I think Shad has a lot of components. What do these projects both need? They probably just mostly need like a data table, right? You're gonna get a bunch of stuff, list a bunch of stuff. There's lots of little green and red boxes, that kind of thing. So seems like that's a useful thing to think about. I'll pause there because I just kind of did a brain dump, but there's other things on the out in the world. There's Vue and there's Angular 2 and 3 or 97 or whatever it's up to now. And that kind of stuff. But this is just kind of my quick barf of what I've seen lately. The end. I'm rambling now.
Yeah, I can give a bit of context for the more recent state of development for stuff as I'm aware. Peter or other folks, please break in for because I'm going to mention the PROW as well. And I know that there's been a little bit more done since I was last like doing more stuff for it. So to my understanding, both PROW and TestGrid largely had like original UIs written a while back. I haven't had significant development since then for the original one. So this is talking about like the legacy test grid UI that is currently being used for Kubernetes. This is talking about the one that is on Proud.K.io as well for Proud. Um, so I think for that sense, like neither have been like super modernized to bring things up to standard, except for where we have had to fix things where they've broken. Um, for the test grid UI rewrite, we did have some folks dedicated to that for a bit. This is the part where it was like we have an AP or add an API so that we can like reasonably load the backend state and then translate it to the UI in a way that doesn't have to deal with a bunch of legacy shim stuff. Where like the backend and the front end state were the same thing and that causes problems. So the API is a nice abstraction layer and theoretically should be more performant. It looks like we need to look into that a bit, but like I still have hope there. Because regardless, it requires a network like call, and the API should have a lot better scaling capability with regards to that. Um, so for the new UI, basically we have had development, and then some of the goals of that, if I can remember correctly, are basically like we want it to be, I think it's pointed out, relatively like suited for engineers to be able to add things to it without it getting like overly complicated or just bad. Um, so people should be able to edit it into the future. It should be like easy to keep up to modern standards. It should be like well structured. Web components were like a way of doing that for like separating things out into like modular bits. Other ways of doing that are also fine. There is, I think, as I mentioned, also like potentially the pipe dream of like having web components like specialized web component from test grid, e.g. the grid view in like the PROW UI, or vice versa if we find a way for that. For instance, maybe like test result view I think is less useful. I think just linking out to PROW makes more sense, but like it would be plausible to share components between the two. Um, I think in keeping along with a like engineer should be able to update it. I wouldn't want to say that like what is it? It is required for that to be the easiest thing in the world, but it's probably good not to add a ton of friction for folks who are like well-meaning and wanting to update things or make improvements.
Mhm.
And then there's one more thing I wanted to mention before I forget it. Let me think real quick. That's good wise. I think also making sure that we have something that is, I think personally at least, I'm a little bit willing to trade having to do things a little bit more from vanilla or like less dependencies in favor of not needing to like swap frameworks later or something like that if necessary. Basically, like, I I will also defer to people who know front end better than I do. But I think the less that we have to rely on very specific dependencies or whatnot, especially if they're not really used elsewhere in Kubernetes, probably the better, especially to start. So that's like a trade-off between that versus like how easily we get things started. Especially because like I still think theoretically the front end for test grid is not a complicated concept. So at least some of it should be like, even if we have to do things like bare CSS or whatnot, still understandable, and still look nice. But also I'm more like, yeah, UI component like that we can reuse, for instance, for a lot of the basic stuff would be great. I don't think we should be handwriting that. Okay, that's my rough thought dump over. Brady.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Um, I don't mean to complicate this at all. I promise you I don't. I'm just sitting here and I'm hearing what you're describing, Michelle, and I'm hearing what you're describing, Ben, and I'm hearing Peter's goals with Prow, and I'm still starting to wonder why there are even two separate things at this point that we're talking about, right? Like Prow itself, if you go to prow.k.io, it's a list of jobs, right? Like you see the jobs, you can rerun them, you can click through them. Why is, I guess, ambition, as far as ambitions go, why should test grid be completely separate, right? Like why shouldn't it just be another pane of glass within the Proud Arcades IO dashboard? That may be too ambitious. I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. That question has come up multiple times. Uh, I think the okay, so I can at least give two answers off the top of my head. One of which is that is kind of reasonable. I think the effort just hasn't been made, or it hasn't been like definitively decided that that is necessarily a good thing. Two, my argument would be like both Prow and Test Grid are kind of doing their own jobs well. They are both like pretty modular, so they are not required to work with each other. In the same way that I think we like historically have had different tooling within Test and Prow that like works together, and like great if we can make it work even better together. But it's not like required that you need, for instance, an entire triage stack in order to use Test Grid or Prow, or vice versa. That said, like given that this isn't as tied now to like Google, not requirements or anything, but like the development has shifted for where it's being done, like that is a thing to consider. I guess in that case, we would just want to actually compare concrete pros and cons for like having it as a single pane or a combined application versus keeping them modular and being able to use it elsewhere. Given that I think if we like start with the axiom of this is being developed largely for Kubernetes use, and we do not care about externalizing this to other users, that is a lot easier to say we can use both together.
No, thank you. That I think that clears a lot of that up. And I'm not saying that this is something we have to jump on right now. I just think as long as we're talking about using the same technologies, doing all these things, why would we end up having two different build pipelines, two different deployments that we're maintaining when they're all so closely linked, right? You look through Proud to look at the jobs you want to look at, then go to Test Grid to see historical results, or you go from Test Grid back to Proud to look at the jobs, rerun them, etc. I have to run downstairs, but my other thing that I want to talk about in a few minutes or maybe later is Headlamp, because there's a SIG UI apparently. I wasn't aware that there was a SIG UI, but there's apparently a SIG UI. So understanding their kind of charter and use cases and technologies that they kind of recommend would probably be pretty good route for us in ensuring that we're kind of staying within the same lane, I guess. But I wouldn't say we have to be married to any of it if we don't want to. Just a thought.
Yeah, I know Sugi was pointed out to me as a thing that exists last year. I haven't gotten much of a chance to look further into it, or how like closely related it should be to our effort. But like, I am now taking a look at the front end stack, for instance, because that might be like ideas that we can either run with, or maybe they might want to like take some of the things that we would be doing and use it. I don't know. I don't think conceptually the two at least make sense to be together, for instance, but in terms of being another Kubernetes project that also has like a tech stack that involves UI, we might want to consider like if there is a tie between two things, go with the one that's also used elsewhere in the project.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. They are using Vite. But yeah, right, because if you have a bunch of UI folks over there that happen to know stuff already and it's already in the Cube community, then it does seem like sticking to that is a decent idea at this point. Oof, they use Redux though.
This is the other bit where it's like I am very passively familiar with the fact that stuff exists. I have not used React or Angular or anything, so I do not personally know either like the proposed pros cons for those or like the actual experience of using them and all of the like annoyances that pop up. So that one I'll definitely defer to other people for like how cool or annoying is React anyway, or like other tech tied to it.
Peter Brady, how much UI have you done? And is there others out who haven't come to this meeting that are opinionated on that?
So I have done zero front end. Like I know
Oh.
nothing. I'm not familiar with with technology. Like I can do basic stuff with, especially now with agents, and I kind of know my way, like some little basics, but I don't. I'm completely green. Like my my thing on my angle, like as a Prow maintainer, is like we don't have that many maintainers in Prow, but we have people coming asking like I want to do something, and I was observing that there's some activity happening in test grid, and I was thinking like maybe we could share some contributors, like we like especially for the front end people, like it would be great if we wouldn't need to like have test grid UI people and Prow UI people if we ever have like if we ever are lucky to have UI people. Uh, but like it would be great if like personally I don't think like the two projects need to be like that like unified, like put into one system or something like that, like what Brady said. But I think it would be great if we could share like development principles, technology, so that like someone comes and does a little bit of in test grid and then they can come and improve something in Prow. It would be easy for them.
I
I
kind of,
think
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm terrible at using the hand raising thing, so scold me, and it will be my fault for blabbing in front of people. Sorry
We have
about that.
four people. I think it's roughly fine. If we really get disorganized, then somebody requests and we can go back to hands.
Okay. Didn't Headlamp just recently became the official UI of Cube, right? Wasn't that a I think they finally said don't ever use Cube Dashboard anymore, bah, go away. Headlamp is the new coolness, I believe within like the
Yeah.
last 6 months.
Yeah,
So
the dashboard is deprecated, and they'll recommend you to use this one from what I've seen. And to answer your question a minute ago, I guess I've been doing UI development now for right under 6 months for Quay. We're porting over the old Angular UI to React. It's honestly been a miserable experience, but using LLMs to drive it has made it a lot nicer. So I'm perfectly familiar with React. I'm fine working on any of that. That's not a problem. And I dislike Angular for what it's worth. But both to Michelle and Peter's point, like I think as long as we stay kind of within the realm of what Kubernetes or SigUI kind of recommends, that can kind of garner contributions from people who are a bit more willing to just jump on a UI bug, right? I'm sure some of these people within SigUI also use Prow, right? And then having them a direct route to be able to contribute, I think would be really nice.
yeah, they already have like Xterm JS picked out if you need a browser-based terminal and all kinds of stuff. So the only thing I look scanning through there would be like, maybe don't use Redux. Go with the stand or whatever it is because it's a lot easier. Other than that, it's like, Lodash looks. I'd like Lodash. It's fun. They're using TypeScript. It's got React. It's got Material UI. I guess I wouldn't have picked that, but if they have already got it, you might as well just stick with it because you know that there'll be somebody to beg for help from that has the skill set. Just speaking as an opinionated person again, feel free to argue. I have no leadership or anything here. I think I internally know somebody at Microsoft around who has something to do with Headlamp. I just don't remember who they were, so I might be able to go fishing for that too, if helpful, just to pick some brains.
Also say I'm not like as familiar on front end stuff. I am a little bit design slash aesthetically opinionated. I think probably in the most annoying way, because if I were more familiar on the front end engineering bit, I would have a better base to stand on for it. But um that's the kind of thing where I wish I were more familiar with like some of the stuff from Figma and whatnot, just for like mocking up like consistent UI for both of these. But I don't know if that's a good use of time at the moment. Maybe it is while we're like trying to figure out like both tech stack and also not have people collide too much on like making those changes to the look and feel.
Yeah, I think some sort of design to get, and I guess the soft version of why are they two different projects would be like, let's just have like a consistent view across them, right? Like the nav bar should sort of look the same, right? The navigation should sort of act the same to where you don't feel if you tab back and forth between the two. There's just two different groups developing it, right? That they have no cohesion behind each other. So sticking to some sort of theme, like whatever Kubernetes theme we want to stick to, like colors, would probably be pretty cool. I think I like the idea, but we definitely need to mock something up so that we can plan out, right? Like different pages and things like that that we want to start tackling.
I think
Oh no,
importantly
Ben,
is,
you're muted, Ben.
oh, sorry.
Ben, you've been muted for a minute. I'm sorry, I
Oh
just looked
no.
up and I saw you talking.
I was just blabbing my mouth and didn't notice I was muted. Yeah, I was kind of going like, I don't know why either way you'd have both. It seems like Prow is kind of the heavy lifter and Test Grid is sort of a viewer of bigger, broader, longer historical stuff. So why not just collapse it down into Prow if it's doable? I don't know, but I'm ignorant. So others here can probably tell me why it's a dumb idea.
I don't think it's a dumb idea necessarily. If we're going to do it, I would at least want a slight consideration of, or sorry, I don't want to pile too many things together in terms of, oh yeah, if we're thinking about this, we should also pull in 5 other projects that are within like sig testing or the broader Kubernetes project and do them all together. Um, I just want to think about like, this is not technically the only UI surfaces we have, for instance, like if we're looking at sig testing, triage is a thing, for instance, both like backend and front end kind of tied in for some other stuff, or more specifically, which is what I was going to mention, a consideration of like the UX and CUJs, or sorry, like user journeys for like people, for instance, in SIG release doing things, and what causes pain points and what things should be linked together well, I think is almost more important than like the UIs having cohesive look and feel. Like that helps, and that helps for the same reason that like sites sharing, consistent navigation and whatnot is like great for familiarity, but the there are some things I think that are like hard to do between test grid and prow and triage and probably some other stuff that we use purely because like we do not have things linking those together well. That may be UI changes, that may be backend changes to enable it. Um, I kind of left on the rant. One moment. I guess my point is, I think we can consider it. I think we may want to consider it from like the CUJ perspective almost of like if somebody is in SIG release or somebody is writing a job and needs to track back what is wrong with their test and why their PR can't submit, like considering what the flow is currently and what we ideally want that flow to be, I think would be good. I'm very tempted to write a doc after this actually.
It sounds like a doc of some kind, noting like what are the related projects, what are the relationships, why would it or would not be benefit or pros and cons of coordinating with them, etc. That sounds cool to me and like a fantastic idea. Plus one.
Is there anyone else I should be consulting about UX stuff, or like, do you think I'm just free to make a doc about this and then hope that it's good UX practice? Okay, if no one's aware of a process or anything, I can try to write one up, especially if somebody bugs me, like on Friday or something.
My gut is Kubernetes is internet plumbing, and so UI stuff is kind of far, far away from the average skill set around here.
Cool. Okay. Um, yeah, let me go ahead and note down I will try and have something, I can even maybe link it next successing meeting for like just the UX of this in general. That could be a bit separate from the tech stack discussion because I don't think the tech stack discussion will be much affected by this, but
I did talk, let's see, I forget if I mentioned here. I did talk to Steve Kuznetsov, and maybe Peter, you know him or not. He's old school back in the Red Hat days, all the way. I think he's been in Prow for a long time, but his opinion was, oh my gosh, why hasn't somebody rewritten the Prow UI yet? So today. So
Yeah,
I think he was, I don't care what you do, just please do something and everybody will be happy.
Yeah, valid.
Neat.
I agree. Absolutely agree. I know Steve like quite well. I was chatting with him recently.
Yeah,
He's
he's
still
great.
interfacing like with Red Hat occasionally. So
Mhm.
I kind of agree. Like I think there is space, and like the like UIs are like fairly separate from everything else. Like I think there's opportunities for someone skillful with an opinion. Like we won't stop anyone like trying to like improve things like to be modern and cool.
Very cool. Were you Red Hat too? Both of you are. Brady, you're Red Hat, and I think you mentioned Patternfly before, and Peter, you're also Red Hat. Okay.
Yeah,
I used to be Red Hat, so yeah,
I see the pug behind you.
yeah, in the hat up there.
Oh, two. Yeah.
Michelle, you do seem like the most knowledgeable person to write a doc about where to go from here, like you suggested. Is that kind of our main takeaway for today? And then I don't know what next.
uh, I was going to actually say I think we may want two forks, or sorry, not literal forks, but like two prongs of attack here, kinda. I think a UX doc, I at least would find it useful. So if it's not going to be a completely a like exercise just for my own benefit, then I can try and have that. And if I actually sit down and take some dang time, I can do that for before next meeting. I think that's the most reasonable thing to promise. Um, The other thing I think is because I am not super familiar with tech stack, I should probably just defer to folks who are more familiar with it. Um, really the like I think I'm mostly fine with things keeping in mind the like normal things of like we work in the Kubernetes project for this stuff. Probably we shouldn't do anything too crazy. That's all. If some other folks are good to like at least write something informal down of like, hey, we think that this is the stack we should use, and here's like the main pros cons here. Again, informal. I do not think this has to be a lot, but I think it would be good to record it and then give folks the opportunity to say like point out any obvious things that we should consider otherwise. Like Arnaud, I think is not here, for instance. So like I think it'd be good to give him the chance to also like note things or just be like, hey, cool. That sounds great if so. Or sorry, if somebody or multiple people are happy to spearhead like making sure that that can get written down, that would be great. Um, bonus if folks want to talk to like SigUI or Headlamp folks and ask about like tech stack choices and like are people happy with that, for instance.
Yeah, Ben, I think me and you can jump on that if you'd like. I think Peter doesn't really care what we choose as long as we kind of choose at the end of the day, and it's maintained well. So, um,
Nice. Good.
Yeah, I'm
That
absolutely not able to spearhead anything, but I would like to be in town. Like if there's something like this happening, like this is how we do UIs and sig testing, like I don't know, like spearheaded by test grid, I would like to be like, and we will start doing stuff like that in Prow kind of like effort. To be aware, like slightly behind, but maybe procuring the work that needs to happen in Prow in this direction.
okay, that would be great. Um, Again, I don't want to necessarily throw something like triage in the mix as well, but maybe we keep that on the back burner as a loose consideration if there's anything that would suck for us. Like, well, actually, no. Triage, I think UI-wise is simple enough that we maybe don't need to consider it too heavily. If we decide to pull that into like unification, great. If we don't, probably also works fine. Oh, did I answer earlier why test grid and Power are different projects, or is that
You did. I started to take notes, but I had to run downstairs.
got it. Okay.
I kind of remember.
I mean, the real reason historically is they're just like they were different projects that happened to be used together later, but yeah.
Yeah, historically, I think it makes perfect sense, and it is very ambitious of me to even bring it up. But I do think it's worth us thinking about it a bit further. If we do end up collapsing so far, is that we have like dead similar tech stacks, we have dead similar themes and everything. It and we just end up linking between the two, right? Like every other hyperlink between Prowl goes to test grid and vice versa. At some point, we may just want to consider collapsing the projects to make maintenance easier on ourselves. But
Yeah.
that's something long term I think we could talk about.
I'll note specifically also, I think there's a difference between a combined UI for the two and combining the two projects. And I'm not mentioning this just because I have a bugbear about people saying that Prow and test grid are the same thing for years. Yeah. Uh, conceptually, including the totality of the stuff that the two do, I think it is good that they remain separate applications, separate APIs, etc. Combine the UI to take advantage of like being able to easily navigate between both, though, I think is a totally reasonable proposition. Doubly so if like the tech stack we chooses makes it easy to like reuse things well between them, or if we want to, or reuse other things if we want to include them. Um, yeah, that's all.
Very nice. Love bugbears too. Isn't there something called Spyglass or something? Does anybody know what that does? I don't remember what that is.
Spyglass is actually part of Prow. That's one of the components. So we have two main UIs in Prow. Like one is called Deck, and it's like a shows list of jobs, like a job browser. And Spyglass is a like single job viewer. Like when you inspect a single job results, artifacts, like that would be that UI you use. It's called Spyglass.
Ah,
Yeah, it's effectively the same thing. Code-wise, it is a little bit different, but like all of it is within the Prow repository. Spyglass's like main thing as well as being able to like show custom or sorry, the normal default info as well as custom info in like iframes. So it's very modular and pluggable, which is nice. I think also, if I remember correctly, it's largely written in Go.
Yep.
I was going to say there is TypeScript there. There must be.
Yeah. Both are correct.
Cool.
does anybody have a opinion on using an LLM to crank it out if we land on stuff?
I don't care too much how the stuff is generated, given it follows the project recommendations for Kubernetes. Except that I think PRs should be easily reviewable without having to use an LLM to review them. That would be nice for me. Um, or more specifically, like everything should be following good engineering practices, regardless of how the code is generated. Like the PR should be incremental, reviewable, clear what it is they're doing, pre-discuss things if it sounds like they will be either controversial or you are not willing to literally throw the work away. Um, what else? Has good tests. Tests would be great. I think the Prow UI currently has no front-end tests, if I am correct. So fixing that would be great.
Playwright. Okay. That's a pretty nice way to go. So you're not in the strong DM mantra of no human rights code, no human reviews code, no human test code.
I think, regardless of my feelings on that, I don't think that's allowed in the project anyway. I think there has to be human involvement. Separately, I also just like, for my own understanding, being able to read through something and then add it to my like understanding of the project, especially with a big change like this. So having it be human readable would be great.
I agree for what it's worth and just nonsense out there for the kicks of discussion.
But I think somebody also helpfully linked in the notes the current guidance around use of AI in the project. So for this meeting as well as like in general, it sounds like that's a good thing to abide by, which is like the I think Ben Elder summed it up in the last weekly meeting, which is like there needs to be human involvement and you are still responsible for your own code, regardless whether you were handwriting it or generating it.
I'm actually surprised there already is AI guidance in here. That's neat.
Yeah, I have not been to the recent chair meetings and I should figure out how to get back on that invite, but I think there have been some discussions at the larger project level for like setting the guidance there because it's been very relevant.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, that actually I need to read through this because I am mostly just relying on the summary that folks were talking about rather than going through the more this is more thorough guidance for sure. Okay, I'm fully in ramble territory. I think actually wait, do we have action items assigned? I'm gonna make sure that that's a thing. Action items. Also, people can still discuss. I just want to make sure that this is recorded or written down somewhere.
I'll just like mention all the AI approach. Like, of course, we need to respect whatever the guidelines apply. Like, I'm personally like very open to just let the models rip, uh, especially for stuff like what I've like seen in front ends in Trowel. Like, it tends to be like modular, so we can like prototype things and try things without like forcing this LLM generated code on everyone who deploys Brow. Like we can have a I don't know V2 UIs, which is like completely crazy, and we do stuff, and it will be mostly LLM generated. And I'm kind of welcoming that, but of course, like within the boundaries that's set by the project. We don't have like big LLM generated code dumps uh, like yet, but I'm very open.
I'm a little worried if it's done I'll use the word sloppily. It's not, I'm not trying to attribute like anything to anybody in particular. But just like if we start with a large dump, actually, regardless, this would probably happen if I were doing the same thing, trying to follow like a tutorial to do this by hand. If we start with a large dump and it is not like well understood or well like engineered slash modular, I am worried that we're going to end up in the same state for like several years down the line where it's like, okay, we can't make any changes to this because it was like initially written and nobody knows how it works and it's working on a very particular like stack that no longer is supported and all of that, the same problems we have. So
Yeah.
my view would just be we avoid that, however it is that we avoid it. And I think keeping the PRs nice and bite-sized and understandable is a good way or a good litmus test for that.
Hmm. Even
Yeah.
like just like that recent PR to put the unit test next to the test that's being the component being coded, stuff like that, where it does help a human go look at it and get it down to that bite-sized component you're talking about and say, okay, cool, I can look at 4 files. They're right here instead
Yeah,
of
exactly.
bouncing all over the place.
Uh,
Uh, yeah, Brittany.
yeah, and I think I'm, I guess, sort of in the middle from where Peter was talking about. We, like I said, we've been doing this with Quay. Like I, I was brought on, told to look at this Angular UI and start pouring it over to React, and I just drove it with an LLM. Let an LLM use the Playwright MCP to literally drive the browser, screenshot its own stuff, and do whatever it needed. It was incredibly effective. Um, that said, I do have a pretty good understanding of the code because I was pretty particular about how things were structured, what libraries we were using, what things needed to look like. And then I to add on to that, we are doing the audacious thing of porting Quay from Python to Go over the next year and a half, year, something like that. Quay was originally written in 2012 in Python for historical context. So I am maintaining right now a 13, 14-year-old project that I have very little context into. But we're trying to use LLMs to do the port, and we've literally spent 2 months upfront planning of detailing everything that we need, down to the API level of what responses we need to end up returning between the two to ensure that we don't just blow up things and this ends up going poorly. So I do think us taking the time to think about the design, think about how things need to be structured, like Michelle's UX document, I think is going to be really big for this because it is going to allow us to then understand what the navigation needs to look like, right? Like how we need to be setting up a certain page if the current test grid is sufficing that. If we have no issue, then it's really just looking at porting that over from lit into React, right? And ensuring that we have good performance, ensuring that we kind of meet the what the existing UI does today. But I really do want us to be sure we're planning these out within issues or not we have to go damn Jira epic scale of this is our whole structure, but understanding like what we're working on and the goals within it. Like let's get a minimal compatible UI for between the old test grid and the new test grid. I think that was a big goal we've had for this current repository that we still haven't really hit. So before we go adding on all the crazy features and doing all kinds of really cool stuff, it'd be great to just get what we can out of the new tech stack, I think. But I'm sort of in agreement with you as well, Peter. I think there's a lot of cool opportunities, like the thing you mentioned earlier, Michelle, that the release folks are asking for. Like once we understand that and have like a GitHub issue from them detailing like, hey, I want this kind of flow for looking at data, we could shit that out in a few like an afternoon or 2 afternoons using an LLM once we actually understand the structure of the project and what it needs to look like.
I'll be a little snarky about uh like status quo isn't necessarily better in the terms of like how code is being structured and what is the design and if there are tests. So I am very confident that if we have someone like knowledgeable with current models, knowledgeable with front end, if they spend 2 weeks letting some very good model read, we will probably end up in a like better state than the current one. The current one has an advantage of it's probably battle tested, but it's written in the past like by people who are no longer around. Like it has this like long time evolution like stuff bolted up on other stuff kind of like approach. So I'm probably like less conservative on this. I'm not as like wild to just do it myself, like knowing no front end at all, like just thinking I'll just like do this myself. But like I would probably be very happy to accept something like if someone bold enough, knowledgeable with front end did this, like I would probably wouldn't reject it.
I'm sympathetic to all people. Michelle's opinion of making it readable and human readable and atomic and whatnot, and making sure it's tested. And Peter yours and Brady's about an LM. I made the strong DM joke. If anybody's familiar with that or not, they have that mantra: no human reads, no. But you can what they do is you write a spec over here with scenarios. You copy only the spec which is very detailed, to your LLM doing the work, and then you run a different LLM to test via those scenarios if it actually did the work or not. And that could be a pretty good way to. I experimented with it the other day and was kind of impressed at how well that works if you have a decent mod like Claude Code 6, V46 or something, because it does keep it from lying. And if you're picky about, unit tests next to every single file, small components, please, not big, giant, gnarly, nasty crap. Um, I bet you could hit a sweet spot of everybody's dreams and goals and wishes and hopes to get something usable up in a fairly short period of time.
Yeah, I have heard of not that specifically, but similar things, and like Yeah, yeah. I also again want to say like I don't mean to be like a huge thorn in anybody's side or like a blocker on a lot of this. I think it's mostly just like in an ideal world, everything should be like one way. I think given the state that we are in, I am not married to the current state either. For like reasons as mentioned, like we have some things that are like not well maintained or gnarly, or like for instance, again, we have no unit tests, I believe, at all in the Prow UI, which is kind of crazy. I don't know how that got away. Or I think actually no, I know. I think we used to have them. I don't know how thoroughly it was covered. I think they were ripped out during a refactor a while back and they were never added back in, and nobody knows how to add them back in. I at least have definitely tried to do like just the most basic of things, and then when like I do not have the time for this, somebody needs like at least a little bit more dedication to do so. But yeah, that is to say, like it's a trade-off. Let's make sure that the trade-off we're making is reasonable. Okay, cool. If there are other things folks want to discuss, we still can. I have a action item for the UX doc, and I will try to get that before next meeting. Or sorry, the next bi-weekly sig testing meeting, which is going to be next Tuesday, which is the 17th. So a little less than a week. Did uh Brady, I heard you volunteer you and Ben for the tech stack stuff. Do you want to officially have your names written down next to that as an action item? For write something down and like have it posted in the repo or somewhere.
Sounds good. We can fight about that, Ray Brady. I'll argue with you sometime.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I honestly think we're gonna be in a pretty good level of agreement. I don't like the headlamp stuff earlier. Like we could drop Redux or whatever. I don't care. Just as long as we kind of understand the decisions when we move away from something that Sig UI has chosen to do. I think it's just that I want to be sure that we understand those trade offs well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that sounds good though.
Yeah, agree. Would be good for us to go fish up one of them or two of them and duke it out a little bit too. I'm using snarky language when I don't mean that. I mean have a nice, happy conversation. I think you can all probably read that through the meeting.
Okay, I have y'all noted down next action items. Please replace with your own cool little chips if you want, because keep forgetting how chips work with email access in this. But that sounds good. Um, Anything else that we want to discuss or to note down? Cool. All right. In that case, I think we can call it. Thanks, everybody. And yeah, looking forward to this. Also, again, periodic reminder. If I am blocking you being able to submit something and I have not given feedback, you are free to ping me in Slack or whatever else you think will get me to respond. I do generally look at things. They will just drop off my radar because I forgot to respond.
Nice.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Have a good rest of the day for everyone then.
Good chatting, y'all.
Great chat. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.